So, I'm going to tell you my story. The best way for you to understand humanistic Judaism. I was born in a problematic city. At one time, it was the great industrial capital of the world. I'll use the name Detroit. Our industry is now collapsing, but that's another issue I don't want to go into. And I was born into the world of Judaism. I didn't choose it. In the womb, they didn't come to me with a little, what would you like to be, ideologically? Well, are you a Sartrean, a Deweyite? I fell out of a Jewish womb. Do you understand? Most people are what they are religiously because they're born into it. They don't choose, and they find themselves part of a culture. And my culture was the culture of a sub-nation of the Jewish people of Judaism. They're called Ashkenazic Jews. They come from Northern Europe. They had a language called Yiddish. And they had all the foods of Northern Europe. They're just wonderful. Onions, beets, carrots, cabbage. No, it's a culture. Do you understand culture? And so there they were, and I was born into this culture. And I must tell you, my parents belonged to a synagogue, a conservative synagogue. Did they ever sit around and have a discussion about God? We talked about anti-Semitism and Jewish survival, whatever. We never talked about God. Jews didn't sit around talking about God. They were secularized. Even my immigrant parents, they came to America. Took 2 weeks, Ellis Island, Lower East Side, Detroit. So, I grew up in a Jewish world in which the issues were Adolf Hitler, not God. They were this worldly issues. And I grew up in this conservative synagogue, the ideology of which I did not agree with. But I didn't have nasty experiences. I had Jewish holidays and I loved them because they brought the family together. Do you know that? And they connected me to my ancestors, and I felt pretty good about that. One of the things it gave me was a deep sense of roots and connection, a larger family to which I belong. I mean, we can all say we all belong to the human family, but that's pretty big. I used to have these friends who loved humanity in general but couldn't talk to their mother. Anyways. So I had very positive experiences, and from very early on, I didn't believe what the prayer book said, but most of the people around me didn't because they didn't understand the prayer book because it was in Hebrew and they didn't understand Hebrew, so that was it. The mistake of the Reform movement was to translate the prayers into English. Mistake. So I had these positive experiences, and what certainly was the thing for my humanism was something called the Holocaust. How could you believe in a kind and loving manager of the world? I mean, the only conclusion you could reach is if there is a God, he is either one of two things. He is either cruel or incompetent. If he's cruel, he's lost his moral authority, and if he's incompetent, why do you want to bother with it? So, finished. Well, then I would look for a profession. I majored in philosophy at the University of Michigan. I wanted to do something in philosophy and with my Jewish cultural identity. I had a culture. The religion wasn't the main part of my culture, as in many respects it isn't even the main part of Christian culture in Europe certainly, and in most parts of North America except the Deep South. So I chose the rabbinate. And when I got there, I found that half the students who were there were closet humanists. Vocabulary of worship. It did not fit what I believed or where I was, so it became intolerable. I could have done what most of the closet humanists who went to seminary with me did, and what is now at the heart of liberal religion, which is denounced by Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins. I could have simply taken the word God and made it mean what it doesn't mean. It's easy. God is love. Well, if you already have the word love, why do you need the word God? God is nature. Well, if you already have the word nature, I mean, the whole point. That is, we desperately want to hang on to the word that seems to confer authority. So separation from that word is for many people a traumatic thing. It's a vocabulary thing, and ultimately I was liberated, and so I wasn't going to stay in the Reform rabbinate. So I went out and I organized a congregation that became the first congregation of what we call Humanistic Judaism.